"We're not compatible," she said, until her actions showed otherwise. HFY read it. The stars were brighter than anyone on Earth had seen in decades. Satellites captured their glow and telescopes trained on the sky with restless curiosity. Yet none of the scientists, politicians, or journalists watching that night could have guessed what would arrive from that brilliance. The ships appeared suddenly like silver needles piercing the darkness, moving with impossible precision and silent grace. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries, but now it was here, uninvited and overwhelming. Captain Elena Ross stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, her eyes fixed on the distant gleam. The station hummed softly, a thin veil of calm over the nerves of everyone aboard. She had been chosen for this moment not because she was the strongest, the smartest, or the most diplomatic. She had been chosen because of her persistence, her ability to keep thinking when everything else screamed to give up. And right now, persistence was all she had. "Do you think they'll communicate with us?" asked Lieutenant Mara Chen, standing beside her. The young officer's voice trembled slightly, betraying the excitement she tried to hide. Elena didn't answer immediately. She had seen humans meet the unknown before, in simulations and in history books. The unknown was rarely gentle. "They are watching," she said finally. "They are deciding if we are worth their time. That's all we can know." The ship slowed as they approached Earth's orbit, moving in a perfect formation that seemed almost alive. Each ship shimmered with light, reflecting the sun in prismatic colors that made it impossible to look at them directly for long. Then, without warning, a single vessel detached from the formation and descended slowly toward the orbital station. Its surface rippled as if it were liquid metal, and a strange hum filled the air, vibrating in the chest more than in the ears. A holographic projection appeared inside the station's command room. It showed a figure tall and slender, with features that were sharp and precise yet inhuman. Its skin reflected light in subtle, shifting patterns, and its eyes, large and liquid, seemed to see everything at once. This was Koresh, the envoy of the Coalition, an interstellar assembly of species that had ruled the stars for centuries. "You are humans," Koresh said, voice clear and musical, but with an edge that suggested judgment. "I am Koresh. I come to determine whether your species is compatible with our coalition." Elena stepped forward. Her heart raced, but her voice stayed calm. "I am Captain Elena Ross, representing humanity. We are ready to meet your standards." Koresh tilted her head, a gesture that seemed almost curious. "We have observed your history, your technology, and your behaviors. You are inefficient, emotional, chaotic. By our standards, you are not compatible." A murmur ran through the command room. Elena's jaw tightened. She had expected skepticism, even hostility. But to hear the words aloud, so certain and so dismissive, burned in a way nothing else could. "We may be chaotic," Elena said, steadying her voice. "But we endure. We adapt. We survive. That is what matters." Koresh's eyes narrowed slightly, scanning Elena as if trying to measure her worth. "Adaptation is inefficient when compared to perfection," she said. "Your species fails more than it succeeds. You are fragile. Your emotional decisions threaten stability." Elena met that gaze without flinching. "Then perhaps you measure the wrong things. Survival is not perfection. Survival is choice, courage, and resilience. Those are qualities you cannot program or calculate, no matter how advanced you are." Koresh remained silent, studying Elena in a way that made her feel like both predator and examiner. For a moment, the room was still. Even the hum of the station seemed to pause, waiting for the alien's response. Finally, Koresh spoke again. "You will undergo a series of tests. They are designed to measure compatibility with our coalition. Do not misunderstand. Failure will confirm what I already know. Your species does not belong among us." Elena swallowed. Her heart pounded, but she straightened her shoulders. "Then we will face those tests. If we fail trying. But we will never stop trying." That is who we are. Koresh's gaze lingered on her, unreadable and alien. You persist, despite knowing you will fail, she observed. Curious, irrational, human. Elena allowed herself a small, private smile. Perhaps. Or perhaps it is the one thing that makes us compatible with survival itself. As Koresh ended the communication and the projection dissolved, the room filled with a new energy. Fear was there, yes, but also determination. Humans had been told they were weak before, and they had always found a way to prove otherwise. Elena turned to her team. Get ready, she said firmly. We do this together. Every mistake, every challenge, it's ours to face. We may not be perfect, but we are human, and that is enough to start. Outside the observation window, the alien ship floated silently in the void, a gleaming challenge. Inside, humans prepared to show what they were made of, not just to aliens but to themselves. The first step had been taken. The test was coming. And for the first time, the stars felt a little closer, not because of alien ships, but because of human courage. The orbital station buzzed with activity, but the humans moved with a quiet determination. Elena and her team prepared for the tests, knowing that every move would be scrutinized by Koresh and the coalition. The alien envoy's words still echoed. In Elena's mind, your species is inefficient, emotional, chaotic. It was meant to discourage, but for Elena, it sparked a fire instead. Captain, the preliminary instructions have arrived, said Lieutenant Chen, handing Elena a thin data pad. On it, a series of simulations and physical challenges had been outlined. Other species had already completed similar trials in their home systems, achieving flawless scores. Humans, however, had never encountered anything like this. Each task required precision, timing, and logic beyond the limits of human technology. Or, so it seemed. Elena studied the instructions carefully. It's not just about skill, she said. It's about how we react when things don't go as planned. That's where humans shine. Her team exchanged nervous glances. They had trained for emergencies, for space missions, for moments, when lives depended on quick thinking. But these tests were different. The aliens measured everything with impossible accuracy. Every hesitation, every misstep recorded and analyzed. Failure could mean dismissal, or worse, rejection from the coalition entirely. The first test was a navigation trial in a zero-gravity simulation. Human crews had to guide an automated vessel through a complex asteroid field with split-second decisions. Advanced alien AI could predict trajectories with perfect accuracy, but humans had to rely on intuition, experience, and teamwork. Elena's fingers danced across the controls, issuing orders with calm urgency. Left thrusters 15%. Now, adjust vector 3 degrees starboard. Brace for the turbulence, she called. The vessel shuddered violently, spinning out of alignment, but the humans corrected it just in time. The aliens, observing through their advanced systems, recorded the moment as an error, but Elena didn't see it as failure. She saw it as survival. The next test measured problem-solving under pressure. Complex puzzles and rapid-fire scenarios appeared on the station's holoscreens. Other species solved them with clinical precision, but humans hesitated, questioned, debated, and sometimes failed spectacularly. Elena's team argued over solutions, voices rising and falling, until finally they arrived at a strategy no algorithm had predicted. It was messy, imperfect, and brilliant all at once. Koresh watched silently from the projection, her liquid eyes unreadable. To her, humans seemed reckless. Their process was inefficient, their methods chaotic, yet every time they stumbled, they found a new way forward. It irritated her, yet it fascinated her too. Captain, this is madness, Chen whispered during a brief pause. We're slower than the others, we'll fail. Elena shook her head. We won't fail because of mistakes. We'll fail if we stop trying. Watch and learn, Lieutenant. This is how humans adapt. By the third test, fatigue began to show. The humans had endured long hours of simulation, decision-making, and zero-gravity maneuvers. Their bodies ached, their minds were tense, yet they refused to quit. When the simulation glitched unexpectedly, a test no other species had faced, Elena improvised a solution on the spot. Her team followed, trusting her instincts. The vessel stabilized, and they completed the test in a way the coalition hadn't anticipated. Koresh leaned closer to the projection lens, her expression unreadable. She had expected compliance, efficiency, cold perfection. What she saw instead was unpredictability, courage, and a stubborn refusal to surrender. They should fail, she murmured to herself, and yet they persist. The humans were unaware of her observation. Elena gathered her team for a debrief, her eyes bright despite exhaustion. "You did well," she said. "Not because we were perfect, but because we kept moving forward when others would have given up. That is what matters." Chen smiled weakly. "It feels strange. The alien said we weren't compatible, and yet, somehow we keep finding solutions they can't predict." "That's exactly it," Elena said. "We are not machines. We are human. We improvise, we take risks, we fail and learn. That is our advantage." Koresh observed silently as the team rested. She had grown uncomfortable with a realization she could not fully articulate. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but unpredictability carried power, the power to survive when logic failed. Their flaws were not weaknesses. They were strengths. Later, in private, Koresh sent a short message to Elena. "You persist against odds. You fail repeatedly yet endure." Fascinating. Elena read it and felt a quiet satisfaction. The alien had called their persistence fascinating, a word that suggested more than mere observation. It suggested curiosity, perhaps even admiration. The team slept little that night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, tests of endurance and logic, puzzles no species had solved before. Elena walked the observation deck alone, gazing at the distant stars. She thought of the humans who had come before her, who had survived wars, disasters, and exploration into the unknown. Their legacy was stubbornness, resilience, and a refusal to yield. "We'll show them," she whispered to the stars, "that being human is enough to face the universe." And somewhere, in the void of space, Koresh's eyes followed her silently. The envoy had declared humans not compatible, but with every choice Elena and her team made, with every daring improvisation, that conclusion began to waver. The first day of tests had ended. Humanity had stumbled, failed, and risen again. Koresh had observed, and the galaxy for the first time in generations might soon witness a species that refused to conform, but refused to be defeated. The station's lights were dimmed as the humans prepared for another day of trials. Fatigue clung to their muscles and minds, but there was no room for rest. Elena paced the observation deck, thinking about Koresh's message from the night. "Before you persist against odds, you fail repeatedly yet endure." Fascinating. It was not praise, not approval, but it carried weight. Koresh had acknowledged their persistence, and for Elena that was a start. The new test would not be a simulation. The coalition had announced a live exercise, navigating a derelict ship drifting near the edge of the system. Its origin was unknown, its systems erratic, and the structure was unstable. Other species would approach cautiously, relying on perfect algorithms to guide them. Humans, however, would rely on intuition, creativity, and courage. "Captain, we have a briefing," said Chen, handing over the holographic display. Images of the derelict floated in the air. Twisted metal, flashing lights, and wide gaps in the hull. It was dangerous, unpredictable, and perfect for the human team. Elena studied the visuals. "This isn't just a test of skill. It's a test of judgment, and judgment is human," she said. "We'll take risks, yes, but calculated ones. We improvise where others hesitate. That is our edge." The crew boarded their shuttle, hearts racing but minds focused. The station receded behind them, a tiny sphere of civilization in the vast emptiness of space. Outside, stars sparkled coldly, indifferent to human courage. The derelict loomed ahead, dark and silent. As the shuttle approached, alarms blared. Debris floated unpredictably, and automated defense systems from the derelict activated, reacting to their proximity. Other species would have halted, calculated every movement, and waited for a perfect solution. Elena adjusted her course in real time, shouting orders over the alarms. Chen left thrusters 50%. Marco stabilized the rear thrusters. Keep the approach slow but steady. The shuttle lurched, narrowly avoiding collision, yet the team moved with synchronicity born of trust and training. Koresh watched the proceedings through a projection in her quarters. She had expected hesitation, mistakes, panic, but the humans pressed forward, solving problems instinctively. Their methods were imperfect, chaotic, yet effective. Each success contradicted her earlier judgment. Humans were inefficient, emotional, incompatible. And yet they were surviving where perfection might have failed. Inside the derelict, Elena led her team through corridors that twisted in impossible angles. Systems flickered and failed unpredictably. Pressure levels fluctuated, threatening collapse. Human ingenuity came alive. Marco rigged temporary stabilizers with spare components. Chen hacked damaged consoles, creating workarounds where alien engineers would have paused for analysis. Every move was improvised, risky, yet necessary. Finally, they reached the derelict's core. A critical system had to be reset to prevent structural failure. The aliens had calculated it was impossible without specialized knowledge. Elena surveyed the components, considering the patterns, making connections no algorithm could anticipate. "This will work," she said confidently, instructing her team to follow her lead. The system responded. Lights flickered, alarms silenced, and the derelict stabilized. The humans exhaled collectively, adrenaline still pumping, knowing they had succeeded where others might have failed. Outside, their shuttle floated free once more, carrying them back toward the station, proof that human creativity and persistence could solve the unsolvable. Koresh's projection lingered longer than usual. She had not anticipated admiration, yet she felt it stirring, a strange, unfamiliar sensation. Humans were reckless, yes, but their unpredictability produced results that logic alone could not. She had believed they were incompatible. She now wondered if her judgment had been premature. Later, Elena received a direct communication from Koresh. "You defy prediction. You adapt in ways that are inefficient yet effective. You persist where others would halt. Your species is curious." Elena smiled faintly. "Curious?" she murmured. "That's one word for it." But the conversation left a seed of tension. Koresh remained firm in her assessment. Humans were emotional, chaotic, and fundamentally different from the Coalition's perfected species. Yet the envoy could not ignore what she had witnessed, their courage, creativity, and unyielding determination. That evening, the humans gathered in the station's small recreation area, exhaustion etched on their faces. They spoke quietly, sharing moments from the derelict mission, analyzing what worked and what didn't. Elena watched them, pride swelling quietly. Humans did not always succeed perfectly, but they endured, adapted, and learned. That was what made them extraordinary. No, Chen said softly. "Koresh keeps saying we're incompatible, and yet, every time we find a way to win." Elena nodded. "That's because compatibility isn't about being the same as others. It's about survival, resilience, and courage. That is human. That is why we endure." The stars outside shimmered, with distant light, indifferent yet beautiful. Elena felt a quiet determination settle in her chest. They would face more tests, more judgment, and perhaps more doubt. But humans had a way of proving themselves against impossible odds. That was who they were. Koresh, observing silently from afar, could feel her certainty waver. Humanity was an anomaly, a challenge, a puzzle she could not solve with calculations alone. And for the first time she felt something like respect, though she would never admit it outright. Humans were reckless, chaotic, unpredictable, and yet they survived. Elena looked out at the stars, thinking of the challenges ahead. The tests were far from over, but she knew one thing clearly. Humanity would not yield. No matter the odds, no matter the alien judgment, they would endure. And, perhaps in the process, they would show the universe why humans were not just another species, but a force to be reckoned with. The calm of the orbital station shattered without warning. A series of alarms rang out, lights flashing red as the entire system shook violently. Elena's heart jumped, and she gripped the railing of the observation deck, steadying herself. Reports came in fast. A rogue fleet of hostile machines, ancient war constructs from a long-forgotten conflict, had entered the system. They moved with deadly precision, attacking anything in their path. "Status!" Elena demanded, her voice sharp. Lieutenant Chen rushed to the control panel, fingers flying over the console. "The coalition fleets are engaging, but they're holding position. They're following protocol. Wait, observe, and calculate before acting." Elena's eyes narrowed. Protocol meant hesitation. Hesitation meant destruction. "We don't wait," she said firmly. "Prepare the shuttle. We move now." Her crew exchanged uneasy glances. The coalition species had unmatched firepower and advanced AI, yet humans were about to throw themselves into chaos. "Captain, this is dangerous," Chen whispered. "We could be destroyed." Elena nodded, her expression calm but determined. "Yes, but inaction guarantees failure. We act, we adapt, we survive. That is what humans do." The shuttle launched into the void, weaving past debris and the hostile machine's energy blasts. Other coalition ships fired methodically, calculated strikes, avoiding unnecessary risk. Humans, however, improvised with every move. Elena gave rapid commands, adjusting trajectory based on instinct and observation rather than algorithms. Every twist and turn was dangerous, unpredictable, but it worked. Shields at 70%. "Increase lateral thrusters. Marco, adjust rear stabilizers," Elena shouted. The shuttle lurched violently, narrowly dodging a massive kinetic strike. Her crew responded instantly, trusting her instincts, not instructions from any program. Koresh watched through the projection feed, her eyes widening slightly. Humans were breaking every rule, defying every expectation, yet somehow they were surviving. Their methods were reckless, chaotic, unpredictable, and still they pressed forward, while coalition ships remained cautious, constrained by procedure. Inside the shuttle, Elena's mind raced. They needed to create a diversion to protect the station and the coalition fleet. Using scraps of intelligence gathered from previous missions and improvisation, she devised a plan that no algorithm could have predicted. "Chen, mark a weak point in their formation. We'll draw them in, then loop around. Marco, prepare the decoy drones." The crew moved swiftly, executing the plan with precision born of trust and necessity. The drones distracted several hostile machines, giving the coalition fleet an unexpected advantage. The humans weaved through chaos, taking calculated risks at every turn. The impossible became possible because they refused to let fear dictate their actions. At one point, a massive machine barreled toward the shuttle, weapons locked and ready. Elena saw only one option. "Hold on!" she shouted, pushing the shuttle into a daring maneuver. The vessel spun, dodging the strike by inches, and the machine crashed into debris from another destroyed construct. The humans exhaled collectively, hearts pounding, but their focus never wavered. Koresh's projection flickered, and she muttered to herself, a rare moment of indecision crossing her expression. How can they survive so recklessly? Humans should have failed by every calculation. Yet here they were, adapting, improvising, and turning potential disaster into advantage. When the battle finally subsided, the station and fleet were mostly intact. Coalition ships had taken fewer casualties than expected, thanks to the humans' actions. Elena's team floated back to the station, exhausted but triumphant. No one celebrated. There was no time. But a quiet pride settled over them. They had faced near-certain destruction and survived through courage, improvisation, and determination. Their humanity had made the difference. Later, Koresh sent a private message to Elena. "Your species defies prediction. You improvise where others hesitate. You persist where others would retreat. I observed closely. Elena read the words and smiled faintly. She knew what the envoy didn't say outright. Her actions had spoken louder than any judgment or test. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, reckless, and that unpredictability had saved lives. Chen approached Elena, exhaustion clear on her face. They said we weren't compatible, and yet we made a difference. Elena nodded, looking at the stars through the observation window. Compatibility isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, courage, and the will to survive. That is what humans bring. That is why we endure. The humans rested briefly, but Elena knew the tests were far from over. The coalition would continue to challenge them, expecting failure. But humans had proven something undeniable. Their flaws were strengths, their instincts were survival tools, and their courage could defy even the most precise calculations. Koresh lingered in observation, silent, but thoughtful. Humanity was supposed to be weak, inefficient, and incompatible. Instead, she had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans acted when others would hesitate, adapted when others would fail, and survived where logic alone would not suffice. Tikyo, shuttle crews, the station teams, and even Elena herself knew one truth. The universe had never seen a species quite like humanity. They were unpredictable, chaotic, emotional, and entirely spectacularly human. The first true test of fire had passed, and humans had emerged, not just alive, but triumphant. The stars outside seemed brighter now, almost as if acknowledging their resilience. And somewhere deep in the coalition's calculations, Koresh realized that humanity's unpredictability might not be a flaw, but a force the galaxy could not ignore. The aftermath of the battle left the orbital station buzzing with reports, repairs, and quiet celebrations. The humans had survived the chaos, but the coalition still looked on with skepticism. Elena walked the observation deck, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. Her team had improvised, adapted, and saved lives, yet Koresh still maintained the official verdict. Humans were incompatible. Then the envoy requested a private meeting with Elena. The projection room was quiet and cold, the only light coming from the holographic figure of Koresh. She appeared taller than usual, her eyes scanning Elena as if trying to measure every thought. "You persist," Koresh said bluntly. "You act where logic would advise caution. You risk everything when protocol would dictate restraint. Why?" Elena met her gaze calmly. "Because humans survive by acting, by deciding, by refusing to surrender. Waiting and calculating has its place, yes. But sometimes survival demands action, even when the odds are impossible." Koresh studied her silently. The envoy had been trained to observe without emotion, to judge without bias. Yet Elena's words, her presence, and the results of her team's actions created a conflict she had not anticipated. Humanity was not efficient, not perfect, but they had survived situations that even coalition fleets had struggled with. "Your species defies every prediction," Koresh said finally, her voice tight with an emotion she did not wish to name. "You are reckless, illogical, emotional, and yet you succeed." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "Success isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, it's about courage. And sometimes it's about knowing when to trust each other, even in impossible moments." Koresh's eyes lingered on her. For the first time she felt a hesitation. She could not explain. Humans were supposed to be weak, incompatible, chaotic, but Elena's actions had changed something. Her courage, her judgment, her willingness to risk herself and her team had left an impression. A dangerous impression. "During the battle," Koresh continued, "you acted without waiting for coalition approval. You saved lives. Including mine." "Why?" Elena's expression softened slightly, the weight of the moment settling over her. "Because that's what humans do. We don't abandon those in danger. We act when action is needed. We don't let judgment alone dictate what we do. And yes, sometimes that means risking ourselves, but it also means protecting others." Koresh's projection flickered. She had not expected gratitude nor admiration, nor the simple, undeniable truth in Elena's words. Humans were inefficient, chaotic, and unpredictable. But they had a principle that no coalition calculation could measure: the will to do what was right, even against impossible odds. "You call it reckless," Elena said quietly. "I call it human. We survive because we try, because we act, because we refuse to give up, even when everyone says we shouldn't." Koresh's eyes softened, though she would not admit it. She had seen countless species perfected and disciplined, yet none had displayed this combination of determination, courage, and improvisation. Humanity was an anomaly, a species that thrived on unpredictability. And that anomaly was dangerous to everything the coalition thought it knew. "You persist where others retreat," Koresh said finally, her voice low, almost reluctant. "You improvise when others follow rules. You endure when others calculate. That is curious." Elena nodded. "Curious, yes, but it is also survival. Humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans survive." The two regarded each other for a long moment. Koresh could have ended the meeting with dismissal or criticism. She could have reaffirmed humanity's supposed incompatibility, yet she did not. Elena's courage, her team's creativity, and the outcomes of the crisis had forced her to reconsider. "Curiosity is not enough," Koresh said finally. "Your species still lacks efficiency. Protocols exist for a reason. You risk chaos." "And yet," Elena replied softly, "chaos has saved lives today. Chaos has made us survive where rules would have failed. We are not perfect. We are human. And sometimes that is enough." Koresh fell silent. She could not fully articulate why, but Elena's words and actions lingered in her mind. They were reckless, yes, but their unpredictability held a power no logic could measure. Humanity had something no perfected species could emulate: courage, creativity, persistence, and the instinct to survive against all odds. Elena turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You keep saying we're not compatible," she said, "but your actions show otherwise. You watched us survive, adapt, and protect others. Isn't that something worth considering?" Koresh hesitated, projection wavering slightly. For the first time, she found herself conflicted. Humanity had proven more than she had predicted. They had acted in ways that were chaotic, emotional, and entirely human, but their results had been undeniable. "You persist," Koresh said finally, almost to herself. "I observed closely. Perhaps your species is more capable than I believed." Elena allowed herself a faint, quiet smile. She did not need Koresh to admit it fully. Actions spoke louder than words. Humans had survived, adapted, and triumphed where logic alone could not. And that was the first true victory. As Elena walked back toward her team, a quiet determination settled over her. The tests were far from over, the coalition still judging, still observing. But humans had proven something undeniable. They were not just survivors, they were a force the galaxy could not ignore. And with every choice, every act of courage, they would continue to show that being human was enough to face any challenge. The council chamber was vast, a ring of translucent platforms suspended above a glowing core. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, their forms elegant, mechanical, or completely alien. Elena stood at the edge of the human delegation platform, her posture straight, eyes steady. The room hummed with anticipation. Today would determine humanity's fate in the interstellar coalition. Koresh hovered at the center, her gaze sweeping across every delegate. She had delivered assessments before, passed judgment countless times, yet she hesitated now. Humanity was not perfect. They were emotional, chaotic, and reckless. But they had endured crises, adapted to impossible scenarios, and acted with courage that no protocol could predict. The envoy had witnessed firsthand that humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability had produced results. Representatives of the coalition, Koresh began, voice resonant. Humanity has been evaluated. They do not conform to our expectations of efficiency or order. Their species is inconsistent, emotional, chaotic. By conventional measures, they are not compatible with our coalition. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some species nodded in agreement, citing human unpredictability. Others whispered uneasily, recalling the humans' decisive actions during the recent attack of the rogue machines. Elena stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. You call us incompatible because we do not follow your rules, because we improvise, because we take risks you would never dare. But what you call chaos has saved lives, preserved your fleets, and turned near certain disaster into victory. Koresh's eyes flicked toward her. The humans were speaking openly, without fear. Other species often deferred to protocol, but humans spoke from instinct, from experience, from courage. Elena's words carried weight, not because of elegance or strategy, but because of truth. You measure compatibility by logic and efficiency, Elena continued. But survival, resilience, and courage are not always logical. You saw how we acted during the attack. You saw how we adapted when no system could predict what would happen next. You saw that we endure when others hesitate. That is why humans are not only compatible, we are essential. The room fell silent. Koresh's expression remained unreadable, but internally she grappled with contradiction. Humanity should have failed. Their decisions had been reckless, yet they had succeeded. Their emotions should have hindered them, yet they had motivated them to act. The humans' unpredictability was not a weakness. It was a strength. A council member from another species raised a voice. They are emotional, yes, and reckless. Their methods are untested beyond these trials. Should we risk admitting a species that cannot conform? Elena turned to them. Conformity is not survival. Perfection is not strength. Humanity has demonstrated that we can face impossible odds, make choices that machines and rules cannot anticipate, and endure when others might fail. You do not risk by accepting us. You risk by ignoring what humans bring to the galaxy. Koresh's gaze returned to Elena, a quiet acknowledgement in her eyes. She had seen it all. The daring maneuvers, the improvisation under pressure, the instinctive courage that defied prediction. Humans had turned flaws into advantages, unpredictability into triumph. And now, in this moment, she knew she could no longer maintain her earlier judgment without contradiction. You adapt where others break, Koresh said, voice calm but deliberate. You improvise where others follow orders. You persist when others retreat. These qualities are remarkable. Perhaps your species has something the coalition lacks, the ability to act when logic alone cannot guide the path. Elena allowed herself a small, quiet smile. The envoy's acknowledgement was subtle, but it carried meaning. Actions had spoken louder than words. Humanity had proven its value not by perfection, but by courage, creativity, and resilience. Another council member argued, and yet their unpredictability could endanger coordinated operations. How do we trust such a species? Elena's voice rang out clearly. Trust is earned, yes, but fear should not dictate judgment. We have earned our place by acting decisively, saving lives, and demonstrating that human creativity and courage can solve problems no protocol or algorithm could. Our unpredictability is not a flaw, it is a strength, a force that ensures survival in situations that no calculation can resolve. Koresh paused. She had expected defiance, perhaps desperation. Instead, Elena spoke calmly, confidently, with clarity rooted in action. The humans were no longer just a subject for observation. They were an example, a lesson in why survival, courage, and creativity mattered as much as logic or order. The council deliberated, voices rising and falling, but Koresh's vote was decisive. She spoke again, and this time her words carried authority. I vote in favor of humanity's inclusion. They are unconventional, yes, but their qualities complement what the coalition has lacked. Their courage, adaptability, and persistence are essential. Humanity is not only compatible, they are necessary. A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. Many had assumed her decision would align with the initial judgment, rejection. Instead, Koresh had recognized the truth. Humans unpredictable. Courage was a force the galaxy could not ignore. Elena's heart swelled quietly. She glanced at her team, who had watched silently from the human delegation platform. They understood. Every risk, every improvisation, every act of courage had led to this moment. Humans had proven their value not by conforming, but by surviving, adapting, and thriving. The Council's final vote followed quickly, largely swayed by Koresh's recommendation. Humanity was accepted, not as perfect allies, but as a species whose courage, ingenuity, and persistence would enrich the galaxy. As Elena looked out at the stars beyond the chamber, she felt a profound satisfaction. Humans had faced judgment, danger, and doubt, and had emerged stronger not by following rules, but by embracing what made them human. Koresh had once said they were not compatible. Now, through observation, action, and courage, her actions had shown otherwise. The galaxy had seen humanity at its finest, daring, creative, unpredictable, and entirely capable. And for the first time, the universe would reckon with the force that humans brought, not just their technology or intelligence, but their courage, their resilience, and their unyielding spirit. The council chamber had quieted, the final votes cast, and the results announced. Humanity had been accepted into the interstellar coalition. The verdict was not unanimous. Some species remained wary of human unpredictability, but the essential truth was clear. Humans had proven their value. Elena stood at the edge of the human delegation platform, her posture steady, her mind racing with relief, pride, and determination. Koresh hovered nearby, observing silently. Her expression was unreadable, yet her eyes betrayed a subtle recognition. She had come expecting to find inefficiency and chaos. Instead, she had witnessed courage, improvisation, and resilience, the qualities that no algorithm or protocol could predict. The envoy had once declared humans not compatible, but the actions she had seen told a different story. Elena turned to her team, who had gathered around her. Chen, Marco, and the others looked exhausted but exhilarated. "We did it," Elena said softly, almost to herself. "Not because we followed the rules, not because we were perfect, but because we refused to give up." The room was filled with a mix of reactions from other species. Some delegates whispered to each other, questioning whether admitting humans was wise. Others studied Elena and her team with newfound respect. The humans' courage and ingenuity had shifted perceptions. They had turned flaws into strengths, unpredictability into an asset, and determination into undeniable proof that they belonged among the stars. Koresh finally spoke, her voice clear and deliberate. "You have shown what no calculation could predict. Your species persists where others would fail. You improvise where others would follow orders blindly. You act with courage when others hesitate. These qualities are necessary." Elena allowed, herself a faint smile. It was not praise in the conventional sense, but it carried meaning. Actions had spoken louder than words, and humanity's actions had resonated. Koresh's acknowledgement was subtle, but it was enough. Humans had survived, adapted, and triumphed, and the galaxy had noticed. The council adjourned, leaving the humans to gather quietly. Elena watched the stars outside the chamber's viewports, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. They had faced judgment, impossible tests, and a crisis that threatened life itself. They had improvised, risked everything, and proved that human creativity and courage were forces to be reckoned with. Chen spoke softly, breaking the quiet. "Captain, do you think Koresh really believes we're compatible now?" Elena shook, her head gently. "She may still say we're not compatible, but actions speak louder than words. She saw what we are capable of, and that matters far more than any declaration." Marco grinned, exhaustion evident on his face. "So humans are officially dangerous." and valued. Elena chuckled. Exactly. Dangerous, unpredictable, resilient, and necessary. That's humanity. Later, Koresh sent a private communication to Elena. You persist. You act with courage. You improvise where logic would fail. I am uncertain, but you have proven your worth. Perhaps the coalition needs what humans bring more than I imagined. Elena read the message and felt a quiet satisfaction. Koresh may still insist they were not compatible, but her actions, saving lives, protecting others, advocating for humanity, spoke louder than any words. Humanity had not only earned a place among the stars, but had also forced even the most calculating species to reconsider what strength truly meant. Back on the observation deck of the station, Elena gazed out at the vast expanse of space. Ships from the coalition moved silently among the stars, some still cautious, others curious. Humanity's future was now entwined with the galaxy itself, and the possibilities were endless. She thought of the humans who had come before her, who had survived wars, disasters, and exploration into the unknown. Their legacy was stubbornness, ingenuity, and courage, the qualities that had secured their place today. Captain, Chen said, stepping beside her, do you think we can live up to this? Elena smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We don't just live up to it. We continue. We act when action is needed. We endure when others falter, and we adapt when the universe challenges us. That is what humanity does. That is who we are. Outside, the stars seemed to shimmer more brightly, as if acknowledging human persistence. The galaxy had seen a species that did not simply conform. It acted, it risked, it survived, and it thrived. Humans had proven their worth not through perfection, but through courage, creativity, and unyielding spirit. Koresh observed from her quarters, silent and thoughtful. Humanity was an enigma, a force that could not be predicted, calculated, or controlled. And yet, she had come to recognize their value. Their actions had saved lives, preserved fleets, and forced the coalition to rethink its understanding of strength. Humans were not just compatible, they were necessary. Elena turned back to her team, who stood quietly, proud, yet humble. They had faced trials, danger, and doubt. They had acted where others hesitated, adapted where others faltered, and persisted when failure seemed inevitable. And now they had proven to the galaxy, and to themselves, that humanity was capable of greatness beyond expectation. As the station drifted silently among the stars, a quiet understanding settled over Elena. The tests were over, but the journey had just begun. Humans had earned their place among the stars, and the galaxy would never forget the species that had turned flaws into strengths, chaos into opportunity, and courage into survival. Humanity was unpredictable, daring, and resilient, and that was enough to shine brightly among the stars.